So I've been meaning to make this video for a while now, and I just want to talk honestly about what it's like to live with type 1 diabetes. Most people probably know someone with diabetes, be it a friend, a family member, or a coworker, and usually they're going to be either type 2 or type 1. Regardless of that information, knowing someone with it and actually living with it are two very different things. And I just wanted to make a video to relate to the people who have the condition, relate to the people who were recently diagnosed, or anyone who's trying to understand it better. Or if you can find some type of solidarity in listening to this, well, that's all the better. I've lived with this condition every day, and while it's simple on paper, it's a lot in practice. It's quite a bit. It's not about the blood sugars, and it's about responsibility, exhaustion, and learning how to function when you don't really get much of a break. So yeah, this video is just me being honest about that, being honest and candid about it. Quick heads up, I swear a lot in this video, and if that's not your thing, or if you're watching with a kid, just beware. Okay, so the first thing I want to get across, right, is the misunderstanding with type 1 and type 2 diabetes, right? That's the first things first. So if we look up what type 2 diabetes is, type 2 diabetes being the more common of the two, 90% of diabetic patients are type 2 diabetics. It's a chronic condition where the body either doesn't produce enough insulin or doesn't use insulin effectively, which is basically insulin resistance. It becomes resistant or insensitive to the hormone you're producing, which leads to high blood sugar levels, right? And these high blood sugar levels can cause very problematic symptoms like potential kidney diseases, complication affecting the eyes, affecting the heart, nerve endings, right? There's a whole ton of, evil, bad stuff that could happen to you because you're a type 2 diabetic. It's a serious condition, and you should, if you are a type 2 diabetic, you should absolutely be doing everything in your power to get it under control. I believe that type 2 diabetes is a condition that can be much more strongly managed than type 1 because your pancreas is still working and your body can still be resensitized towards insulin. The problem is that for you to be a type 2 diabetic, the type of lifestyle that you have to lead kind of impedes that, right? Now with type 1 diabetics, things change a little bit more drastically in the sense that type 1 diabetes is a lifelong autoimmune condition where the immune system mistakenly destroys insulin producing cells in the pancreas, causing high blood sugar. So the reason why a type 1 diabetic has high blood sugar is not because they're not insensitive to the insulin, it's not because of their body fat, it's not because of their lifestyle, it's quite literally you won the lottery or lost the lottery horribly, very, very, very badly. And that's essentially what it is. It's a genetic condition, right? There are a ton of genetic factors that have to align for you to get type 1 diabetes. And usually when all those factors are put together and they aligned, you are essentially left with a pancreas that is not producing insulin anymore, or at least a body that doesn't react to the insulin that the pancreas is producing. There is no longer any workaround. Now your medication has to be on point, your diet has to be on point, and your physical activity has to be on point, right? You have to figure out these three massive pillars to have a controlled normal life experience. And when I say normal in quotation marks because what I'm describing unironically is actually not normal for a lot of people. That is kind of like the first misconception between type 1 and type 2. The medications that type 2 diabetics use aren't necessarily usable by type 1 diabetics, while the medication that type 1 diabetics use, right, usually the long-lasting insulins, are very much usable by the type 2s. Right? That is a very clear distinction that must be had. This is going to be important later on in the video. Apart from that, there's also a very big misconception or misunderstanding on what's actually the worst part of diabetes, and it's not just the fact that you have to inject yourself with syringes and prick yourself with needles to get your blood sugar and whatnot. It's the mental stack. The mental stack that you have with type 1 diabetes is the constant background calculations that you have to do when you're gonna go out to eat, right? If you go out to eat, all right? If you allow yourself that privilege. There's also the calculations that you have to do with the insulin that you take in and that you're injecting with the amount of carbohydrates you're eating per meal, right? it's a lot of micro calculations that you have to do throughout the day. 6 times to be exact, right? Because you have to eat every 3 hours. Right? Breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, and dinner, and then a final snack. That is basically what I would be doing, right? And it's a massive stack towards your fucking mental RAM, dude. It's simple. People misunderstand easy and simple. It's simple to do. But after doing it for like a couple of weeks, you're gonna realize it's gonna get tiring real fast. I was diagnosed at the age of 16. I say between 16 and 17, right? I was diagnosed at around that age. I was late into high school. When I was diagnosed, I had rapid weight loss, dude. And when I mean fast, ridiculous weight loss, I mean I literally lost like 30 or 35 pounds in like a month, right? Mind you, let me give you my stats, right? I was a 5'8", athletic, 180, 175 pound boy, all right? I played a lot of basketball. I would play basketball every day, and then I would go to the gym, right? And I would eat like crazy. I would eat a lot of food, right? Because I was into the whole fitness industry and whatnot, right? I fell into that little scam. And I dramatically lost all of that weight in like the span of like a month. Basically, the reason why I lost all that weight is because my body was not processing any of the carbs or nutrients that I was eating and that was in my bloodstream, because the insulin, right? The insulin hormone wasn't fucking working. And I was like that for like a whole month. And dude, you could literally see the bones in my hips. I went from my 175 to like 180, around that, all the way down to 149. Fucking crazy weight loss. I was super skinny. You could see my ribs, you could see my not my collarbone, my hip bone, right? My hip bone was starting to poke out, right? My face, right? I was getting bodybuilder death face with no muscle mass, dude. Like, it was awful. And I felt like shit. I felt like genuine human waste. That is the only way I can really describe it. It was a very emotionally draining and taxing experience going through that, right? Because your brain is also not getting the nutrients it needs. So mental conditions, insecurities, right? A teenager going through the height of puberty, having that happen to him, right? It's really fucked, dude. It really messes with your head, right? I would genuinely come back home from school and I would cry in bed for no reason. Genuinely, I would cry myself to sleep for no reason. All right, my hormones were completely out of whack, dude. I would be very volatile towards my friends. I would be a very difficult person to get around with. I would be always tired, always sleeping in class, just very, very disruptive because of that, right? It was a crazy night and day difference for me, at least, and it was a bit of an ordeal, you know? And then not only that, you also add in the fact that I had body dysmorphia, or have body dysmorphia, and dude, like... It's just the ultimate cocktail for misery. After that, my parents caught on very quickly. As soon as they started seeing me with the fucking death face, they're like, yeah, we need to take you to a doctor, right? Like, this is not normal. This is very not normal. Your weight loss journey has been, dude, it's fucking crazy. That makes no sense. I was also frustrated with the weight loss as well, because I didn't want to lose weight. I was eating to gain weight, and I was eating a lot. And I was always hungry. I was always thirsty. I always wanted to drink some type of Sprite, a Coca-Cola, a juice. I wanted to drink something because I was thirsty, but I was hungry, and I was thirsty for juice. Not water, juice. Liquid calories. And anyways, they took me to the doctor, got my blood test results. My blood test came back. My blood sugar levels were at around, I believe, 200 something, 250, 230, 240. I don't know. That is actually very fucking tamed for a type 1 diabetic. Type 1 diabetics usually come back with blood sugars in the 400s, 500s, 600s, and they immediately have to go towards the hospital to get their blood drained from ketones. As soon as they saw the high blood sugar levels, they're like, yeah, you gotta go to a hospital. I went to the hospital. I stayed for 4 days. They had to keep me in the in the cancer area because they didn't have enough space for in the usual area where they were gonna put me. Yeah, dude, that was an experience. I personally didn't see any of them, but my mom did. And for her, it was a harrowing experience, dude. You know, you're thinking like, damn, I gotta take my boy to the hospital, right? And all of a sudden, you go up the stairs, you go through the rooms, and then you see little kids getting fucking chemotherapy, and your kid is in the same room, in the same dorm, right? It's gotta be a fucking awful and surreal experience, dog. In that hospital, they taught me basically all I really needed to know to sort of control my glucose levels. They gave me the warnings of the things that could happen, right? If I didn't keep it in control, of course, they gotta fear monger you. And I had to face my fear of injecting myself, right? I always had a fear of needles. Needles were scary to me. I hated needles. Needles are now my best friend. That is the number one thing that you have to get used to as a diabetic, right? Getting used to getting pricked, poked, and prod. And it was a crazy turning point for me. For now, this is usually where it's like your whole reality fucking crashes and you have an ego death. I definitely, in that hospital bed, had a massive ego death the moment I had to inject myself with insulin, and I had to eat hospital food because I was an extremely picky eater. I would only eat carbohydrates, proteins. I would not eat the majority of vegetables, and I would not eat the vast majority of fruits either. I would mainly just focus on the main stuff, the main dish, and then I would leave everything else if I didn't like the taste or the texture of it. Now, because of the harrowing reality that I was faced with in that hospital bed, I said, you know what, fuck it. My life is on the line. What's a couple of green beans? What's a little bit of broccoli, you know? So a little bit of asparagus, some Brussels sprouts. How bad can they be? Right? Some peas. How bad could it be to just eat more fruits with every meal? How bad could it really be? How inconvenient could it really be? And yeah, I just started eating healthier from that moment on. And it's like my palate just got unlocked because it was like a moment of like survival, I guess. Like my little kid brain, my underdeveloped teenager brain was like, yep, dude, I just gotta lock the fuck in. And it definitely kicked in when I injected myself, dude. Injecting myself was like that big moment where it's like, holy shit, I'm actually doing this, and I have to do this for the rest of my life now. Dude, I remember it. Like, they gave me the little vial and this little syringe. Now, the syringe is actually a lot longer than I expected it to be. So when I opened it up, I was like, dude, there's no way I'm gonna fucking inject myself with this big fucking thing. There's no way my fat deposits are that deep. But the nurse said, no, it's okay. Like, you know, it's not gonna hit any muscle or anything. It's the right length. I said, well, fuck it. I did the process exactly how she told me to do it. I injected it in my stomach. It hurt like a bitch at first, but then I got used to it. And then it stopped hurting because, you know, I had better sleight of hand with the injection, and I got much smoother with it. Now, if it hurts, I don't really care, right? It doesn't really bother me anymore if it hurts. It annoys me a little bit, but, you know, you just don't care anymore because you've done it for so long that it's whatever. But yeah, dude, it's just this immediate shift for a teenager to all of a sudden start thinking about proper dieting, injections, proper scheduling of your meals, and then when to inject your medication. And it has to be something that, again, you do every single day, non-fucking stop. The dietary shift, I really felt it as soon as I left the hospital, and I immediately went into a nature doctor's, a naturopata. That's how they call it in Spanish, how they call it over here. I don't know how to say it in English. Basically, these are these nature doctors that are going to give you these herbs and spices to heal you with nature and prayer. So they sent me to one of these, and he basically had me eating potatoes, very specifically made potatoes. They were very specific non-starch potatoes. Don't know how that worked. Beets, carrots, coconut milk, and a protein supplement. And I was eating that for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks for 6 weeks, or for around 6 weeks, maybe a little bit more. The guy was a complete asshole. I never went back to him. I did do the diet, by the way. We did follow through with the diet because I said, fuck it. I mean, what do I have to lose? Because I could still take my medication, and my doctor, my main doctor, my real doctor, said it was okay. And yeah, we just did it for 6 weeks. Didn't go back to that fucking asshole. because I feel like he disrespected me because he said, you're not going to follow through with it. You're going to break down on that diet. I followed through on that diet. All right, I took it personally, but I didn't go back because I was a pussy. Still am a pussy. And basically, I just didn't like that guy. Just fuck that guy in general. Anyways, moving on. So a normal day for me, at least currently as it stands, what a normal day is like. We already stated how pretty much you got to eat on the clock, right? Every single meal has to fit a certain time frame, a certain time schematic. Every 6 hours, I have to get my fast-acting insulin, and before I go to bed, usually around 9, 10, lately it's been 11 and 12, not proud of it, I have to use my slow-acting insulin, right? So fast-acting insulin with every meal, slow-acting insulin at night before I go to bed. Both of these insulins have to always be there. There cannot be a single mistime or misuse of them, because the moment they get mistimed or the moment I don't get a meal in time, I run the risk of upsetting the very delicate balance that my body has gotten used to, right? If I don't get all 3 doses, I am going to have a epic high late at night. Same way as if I overdose on some of this insulin, right, and I undereat on some of the carbs, I'm gonna go through a epic low later on in the day, and lows are particularly dangerous, right? They're very, very annoying. But again, we're gonna get to those later on. We talked about sleep. Sleep timing matters a lot. You need to get your full 8 hours of sleep. And not only that, you can't stay fasted and awake for a very long time with diabetes, because that does all types of wonky shit with your hormones, and it makes controlling your diabetes all the harder, right? Your body, the whole point is that you want to make everything that you do and the routines of your body and your day-to-day to be as predictable as possible. So the insulin that you're injecting and the mental stack that you have is easier to predict, and it's easier on your mind and easier on you to just, sort of make adjustments on the go and to keep those sugar levels under wraps. Let's talk about hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. Let's introduce these 2 terms because we're going to talk a lot about them. They're part of the reason why diabetes fucking sucks. There's going to be a good portion of you that is going to be hypoglycemic, and maybe another portion that might be hyperglycemic. I've never heard of that, but I've definitely heard of people who have been hypoglycemic. Hyperglycemia is basically it's in the term hyper. It's that your glucose levels are really high. When your glucose levels are really high, common symptoms are very high irritability, and usually ketones or ketones in the bloodstream. What are ketones? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. The best way I can explain them without getting too much into the terminology, because I can't, is that it's pretty much acid to the blood. Your blood gets fucking full of acid, and it's bad for you. You don't want to have ketones in your fucking blood. You genuinely don't. I don't care about the ketogenic diet. I don't care about what you hear about. None of that shit. All right. You don't want to have ketones in your blood. Ketones in your blood is very, 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 very bad for a diabetic. It's very bad. It's very bad for your kidneys. It's the whole reason your organs go into fucking organ failure when you're a diabetic. Ketones. It's just having high ketones in the blood for a very prolonged period of time. Shit's dangerous. It's fucking poison. Bad, very bad. So hyperglycemia is very bad and very dangerous over a prolonged period of time. When you get hyperglycemia in a spike, right? If your sugar levels spike all of a sudden, and it's a very big spike, you run the risk of having epileptic seizures and stuff like that. I believe that is what could happen. You could fall into, little comas. You can pass out, right? Shit like that can happen because when you have hyperglycemia, your body is going to tell you. You're going to feel it. You will literally feel like your mind is now all of a sudden in a bog. All your thoughts have slowed down, right? On top of that, I get phantom pains in my back. I get a lot of weird phantom pains in my back and in my joints because I used to work out a lot and I used to, technically be an athlete. Technically, not really. But yeah, I tend to get a lot of phantom pains in my joints and very weird fullness and bloatness in my stomach, right? It is a very bad feeling. You do not feel optimal. You don't feel cracked. You don't feel dialed. You feel bad. You feel like a fucking slug, all right? It's really bad. You also add on to the fact that you're extremely irritable. You're insanely irritable when your blood sugars are very high. So that is another very bad symptom that you get. Irritability skyrockets. Hypoglycemia is the more dangerous one, in my opinion, or the general consensus is that hypoglycemia is the most dangerous, mainly because a big low in hypoglycemia means that you can fall into a diabetic coma, which could mean death potentially, right? Or like you're just gonna pass out, right? You're just gonna pass out, and the only way that you can wake up is if you get a emergency injection. Or actually, they don't inject them anymore. I think people still use glucagon injections straight to the muscle or to the thigh muscle, I believe. Now they use nose sprays, which wonderful quality of life. Now you just do a little sugar nose spray and they get right up. I've never had to use it. Hypoglycemia is the scarier one because that is pretty much the worst case scenario for hypoglycemia. That is the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, you're going to be extremely groggy. You're going to feel like you're passing out. You're going to be in the process of passing out. You're going to be pretty much drunk for a small period of time. And when I mean drunk, I don't mean the fun kind of drunk. I literally mean your body is not going to, your motor function isn't going to compute how it's supposed to. It's very scary. It is a very scary experience going through a low because your body jumps immediately into fight or flight. And if it doesn't have enough energy or enough hormones or enough adrenaline in that fight or flight, it feels awful. It feels really bad. The other scenario with hypoglycemia is that you enter fight or flight and you do have enough energy. You are absolutely fucking wired and dialed. And it's not because you feel good or you feel healthy. No, it's because your body thinks it's dying and it needs sustenance and it's urging you to eat something before it fucking dies. That is essentially what's gonna happen most of the time. It is a very awful anxiety inducing feeling. Right? You get very terrible anxiety, and on top of that, your stomach feels like a giant, bottomless, fucking burning pit that it will never be satiated with, no matter the amount of food that you give it. That's basically hypoglycemia in my very poor terms. That's going to be the result of if you don't know how to manage your blood sugar levels. You get hyperglycemia ever you wander anywhere above 180 milligrams per deciliter in terms of glucose in the blood. If you hover below 70 or you get to 70, that's when you're in the hypoglycemic range, and you go below that, that's when you enter hypoglycemia. That's when you have to start going through the protocol of the 15-15 protocol. 15 grams of carbs, liquid carbs. You wait 15 minutes, you check your blood sugar levels. Did they go up? They didn't. 15 more grams of liquid carbs, wait 15 minutes. You check your glucose level. It went up. Perfect. Wait 30 minutes or 15 more minutes. I usually wait 30, a little bit longer. I check my blood levels again, my glucose levels again. They went up. Okay, perfect. I leave it alone. I sit and wait. And I have to sit with the feeling of hypoglycemia. When hypoglycemia is urging you, begging you to eat something, right? It doesn't go away with just a sip of juice. No, it's there. The anxiety is there. The fight or flight is there. The energy, the power, right, of I am going to die is there in your body. So yeah, that is kind of like the background on hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia. And basically what you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. This isn't something that you deal with once or that rarely happens. This happens daily. This is a daily occurrence. Not daily, right? Let's not say daily. It can be a weekly occurrence. And by weekly, I mean every other day or so. So yeah, basically daily. So, and then there's also the fact that you have to deal with the burnout of having to deal with all this shit, of stacking all this shit mentally on top of the fact that you are, you know, a functioning adult in this society. Now, this has to be a point that I have to share with all you diabetics and with people who are trying to understand the psyche behind someone who has this condition, is that diabetes is going to be something, the condition itself, I'm going to call it the condition, I'm tired of saying diabetes. The condition itself is going to be on your mind every single day. There isn't going to be a single moment where the condition is ever going to leave your head, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. You're actually better off thinking about it when you have to think about it deliberately, right? To check on it, to control it, to keep it in check, and embrace that suck, that struggle. Because the moment you start ignoring that condition is the moment you're going to fall under I believe it's a psychological condition that type 1 patients get, and is that they get absolutely fed up with the condition itself. They get so tired of having it that they stop caring about what happens. I've read stories in subreddit, in the type 1 diabetic subreddit. I love that subreddit. I've read stories where people literally just give up and they're like, yeah, I haven't taken my medication for over a month now. They literally express themselves in this very defeated manner, this very defeated way. And it's rough, dude. And the burnout is very real. I felt it. There are, in my good days, dude, I'm thinking about the condition every time I have to go to eat. I try to limit myself to only really dwell and think on it whenever I have to eat and I have to inject myself. Once I have that sorted, I don't think about it anymore. I don't think about it until the next 6 hours, right? Or 3 hours. That's on the good days. On the bad days, I don't really think about it. It's just like, oh, I'm eating, let me just inject myself, right? I keep it as simple as possible. But that in itself is also, a bad thing, because again, you have to maintain a level of control. You have to lock in. You have to understand that neglecting your condition isn't a rebellion against it. You're not rebelling against anybody by doing that. You're just harming yourself. It's a complete collapse. It's a complete mental collapse. And you have to be aware of that. You absolutely have to be aware of that. That's something that I've learned throughout the years. After dealing with it for so long, it's something that you actually run into a lot sooner than you think. The most important thing is to embrace that reality, the fact that you have this condition, and now what are you going to do with it? Not think about what could have been, what should have been. Think about what is and what can be and what will be. So now, diabetes also has a very big effect on your performance in everything when it comes to life, right? Type 1 diabetes affects your overall energy levels. For a perfect example is when I play a fighting game. Fighting games are video games where you have to think about a lot of options and a lot of things very quickly, and you got to make a lot of decisions very fast. Whenever you have high blood sugar or low blood sugar for that matter, a lot of those decisions become completely jaded. Add in the fact that of the high irritability, you add in the fact that you have slower reactions. Your brain is reacting to things slower. You add into the fact that your mind is completely muddied. And now all of a sudden, right, your decision making gets completely tanked. And this is just with video games. Just with video games. Now when you take in consideration what happens if this were to happen to me while I was driving, now you realize the danger. Well, what if this were to happen to me if I was, I don't know, let's say if you work a blue-collar job. I used to work a blue-collar job. Let's say I'm carrying some cabinets. I used to work with making cabinets. Let's say I'm carrying some cabinets up a flight of stairs. What happens if all of a sudden I get hypoglycemia? Right? I can't think straight. I can't think right. My body's not responding. I fall backwards with a fucking cabinet on my chest. A cabinet falls on top of me. What's going to happen to me then? What if I fall off a fucking ladder? What if I'm handling dangerous equipment? Now, the performance effect of the diabetes is no longer like a minor thing. Now it's a bigger, much stronger thing. Now it's a bit more concerning. But when it comes to gaming, right, which I guess is the most relevant thing in this channel, because that's what I do on this channel, is pretty much play video games. When it comes to gaming, dude, at worst, all that's going to happen is that I'm going to make horrible fucking decisions. I'm going to start playing like shit. And, yeah, I can just blame my skill issue on my fucking condition. Not really. When it comes to fitness, it means that I have to choose my exercises a little bit more carefully and what I choose to do. I need to pay attention to my body because I don't want to do any risky exercises while I'm having a low or when I feel like I'm having a low. And if I feel like my sugar levels are low, I gotta, dial it back quite a bit. You know, I got to put that weight back up. You know, not I better choose an exercise that doesn't jeopardize my jeopardize me by putting the barbell over me, right? For example, like a bench press or an overhead press, right? Imagine having a low then, dude. Or imagine passing out with the weight all the way up there and you beneath it. Like, that's fuck that. The best way to avoid this altogether is by just having, again, dial in your diet, dial in your medication, and keeping things as stable as possible and maintaining good activity. And that is actually another thing that comes into play. A lot of the times when I'm editing and I'm gaming and I'm on my computer, and now I have a desk job, so because now I work in office, I'm far more sedentary, so hyperglycemia is far more common than hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia tends to be more common the more active you are. Hyperglycemia tends to be more common the more sedentary you are. They're both very dangerous. Hyperglycemia is very fucking annoying, especially when you're sedentary, because you have to actively fight against the sedentary lifestyle. You have to actively be looking to go out there and play a sport. Go for a run, right? Go for a long walk, right? Do some work around the house. You got to stay active. You got to stay productive. Now, let's get a little bit deeper on the psychological aspect of the condition and how you feel whenever you have to deal with this fucking condition. And as the emotional cost is that you are going to build a degree of resentment eventually, if you haven't already. Whenever you start regaining your personality, your ego, right? Whenever you start regaining those things that you lost whenever you got shocked with the news, you're going to feel a degree of cosmic unfairness, right? You're going to feel like, why did this have to happen to me? What did I do to deserve this, right? Those types of thoughts are going to run through your head, and they're completely normal, right? They're part of the coping mechanism. You're going to feel isolated a lot of the times because, again, the percentage of people who actually have type 1 diabetes is a lot smaller than type 2. Even though people with type 2 diabetes can relate with you because they have to suffer through a lot of the shit that you do as well. All right, don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted, buddy. You're going to feel incredibly burnt out, tired of just dealing with the fucking condition all day. There's this very interesting thing that happens. This is food guilt. Whenever I eat something that I know is going to fuck up my system, whenever I give myself a little treat, right, you develop a degree of like, damn, like, I can't eat the foods that I used to enjoy, the chocolates, the things that I loved, without having to think about what it's doing to my condition, what it's doing to my health, and what's going to happen, what's going to be the rebound effect afterwards. Like, it's always going to be there. And it's a slow burn, man. It's a very slow burn. Like, it builds up over time. And this building up and this burnout that I've mentioned before, that we keep mentioning, it's something that just keeps feeding into the resentment. You feel like you lose a lot of your freedom. And it sucks, dude. It really does suck. It sucks. All right? I'm not going to lie to you and be like, no, it definitely gets better from here on out. No, it doesn't. It's not going to get better. It stays the same. You just learn how to cope with it better. You learn how to deal with it better, right? You learn how to work through it and work with it, right? You learn how to schedule yourself a lot better around your condition, and you learn how to manipulate your condition better than, well, anyone can, because everybody has a different body, right? Because this is also something that has to do with your body. Your body reacts differently to things. My glucose levels are very different from some other person that has type 1 diabetics' glucose levels. Like, they function very differently. Only you are in control of that, and you will learn how to deal with these things. And when you learn and when you adapt, that's when things start to feel better. They don't feel better because they just happen to get better. They get better because you made it so. Socially, you are going to feel a degree of social pressure. There are many times when I'm eating in public and I have to inject myself in public where I do feel a sort of like eyes on me. I feel that pressure, that uncomfortableness of like, damn, like, you know, someone might be looking into me, and I worry about what they might think. But then I remember to myself, like, you know, fuck them. They don't have to deal with what I have to deal with right now. So, you know, it's something that, again, with time, you get used to and you adapt to. But social pressure is common. You're going to realize that a lot of doctors that don't have to deal with the condition, don't know about the condition, are going to be insensitive towards it. I've been lucky to meet two endocrinologists and to have had two endocrinologists that are very sympathetic and with my condition. One, because well, one of them has the condition, so of course he fucking gets it. And the other one is just that he shows that he really does care and he really tries to understand and empower the patient as opposed to, give them the usual patronization that doctors give the patient, right? There are going to be friends who will accommodate you and they will understand. And those friends that do understand, that do go out of their way to understand the condition that you're going through and they try to give you options, those friends are going to be very valuable. You're going to treasure them. And to those people who are like that, thank you very much. You're going to have those friends. And then you're also going to have those that have that degree of insensitivity. Well, soon you're going to realize that those are not going to be your friends. Those are going to be people who don't really understand what you're going through and they don't really care to understand, right? They're going to have that mentality of like, well, deal with it, right? It's not my problem, it's yours. And those people do exist. You should do your best to steer clear of those people or to limit your interactions with people who are like that and try to welcome people who are more, again, understanding and welcoming of you. Those are going to be commonplace. And the sooner you realize that you can't change them and they won't magically care, the sooner you're going to cut them off and move on. As long as you try to reach out, as long as you try to explain and communicate, as long as you try and find that middle ground, as long as you tried, that's all you can really do. And if still they don't extend the hand or if still they don't get it, hey man, you tried. Time to move on. When it comes to family, you're going to feel pressured by your family to take care of your condition, especially by those who love you. They are going to show their concerns in ways that you would rather them not choose to do it that way, but a lot of the family pressure comes from love. And when I mean love, it means worry over your condition. They want to understand. They want to involve themselves. They want to help. They want to make it go away. But a lot of the times, they're going to try and do it their way. They're going to try and do it the way that they understand. And that is something, that is a misunderstanding or a misconception that you are going to have to bridge in between you and the family. Letting them know exactly what it is that you need and properly communicating what those things are, right? As long as you understand that, there can always be a middle ground to be reached. And you also tend to feel a lot of guilt whenever they talk about the condition. They might express themselves callously about the condition. If any time any of this bothers you, you are not crazy for feeling like you need to stand up for yourself and feeling like you need to say something, right? For feeling like you have to, at the very least, try and correct or educate a misconception that they might have. And that is a responsibility that I feel that I have with my condition. If anyone ever feels like they have a question about my condition that is within my immediate circle or they have to interact with me, a family member, coworker, a friend, I feel like I'm responsible for letting them know what I need at that moment. I need to let them know and educate them on what they would have to do in those certain situations, right? It is my responsibility to let them know because they're not going to be able to read my mind and know exactly what I need. I need to be able to communicate with them effectively. Now, ironically, there are some good things that have come through the diabetes, and that is mainly discipline proven through repetition. I've had this condition for years, and I've maintained it controlled to a very high degree for all those years. It's proven to me that I am capable of applying myself to whatever I set my mind to. It's given me that capacity that discipline to commit to something with consistency, to see results, to actually go to those limits and push myself to limits so that I can see those results consistently. It's given me a very high capacity for stress or mental stack, however you call it, right? I have a very decent capacity for it because of the condition. Ironically enough, it being a fucking stressor itself But like I said, it gets to a point where you don't feel it anymore. And then all of a sudden, you realize that, again, a lot of things that weren't possible before are very much so possible now. Because if you can get through this, if you can live with this, then, what else could you do? There is an argument to be said where diabetes can actually make you stronger. It can actually make you a stronger person. I don't want to say stronger because I feel like it's a bit insensitive to say that, but I have the condition. And I certainly have felt empowered in certain ways that other people haven't because of the condition. But at the same time, I feel weak in very, very clear aspects because of said condition. Now, to give you the reason why I made this video, the reason why this video exists, honestly, I just felt like making it. Like I said in the beginning, I've been meaning to make it just because I just felt like talking about it. Lately, I've had, a rough couple of days, right? I've been dealing with my condition, and it's been a little bit, I've been a little bit closer to that burnout side of things, right? And that also pushed me towards making it because I needed it to get it out of my chest and to hear myself put these words out into the world, to hear myself tell these things to myself. And for those who have this condition or who suffer from any condition that is similar to this, right? And again, or anybody that just needed to hear the words that I've said throughout the video, There's that, and there's also the fact that I just want to connect with others. I want to connect with others who share this and who have these pains, these concerns, these feelings. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just looking to reach out. In closing, you're not alone, but you are responsible for your condition and how much it improves and it gets better. The stakes are very real because I'm telling you, man, a lot of if you can literally just do a quick Google search, and the amount of conditions and things that can happen because you don't regulate your sugar levels properly whenever you get to the ripe old age of 30. I'm not even talking about whenever you're 60, when you're 50. No, when you're 30, right? The ripe age of 30 to 40. Brother, you are going to get some very, very nasty, horrible side effects if you do not get these sugar levels under control. If you don't do the thing that you need to do to, get this shit sorted, right? And I wouldn't wish blindness. I wouldn't wish the loss of a limb. I wouldn't wish renal failure. I wouldn't wish any of these horrible fucking things that could happen to you onto anybody. Obviously, it's a little bit extremist on my end to think that would be like the worst thing that can happen, but even the smallest things, right? Losing sensation in your foot could be something simple. It's not losing a limb per se, but you're starting to lose sensation in your foot, and that doesn't feel too good, right? Not being able to enjoy your body to its fullest potential, not being able to see everything that your body can do, right? Not feeling the comfort and happiness that it is to have a healthy body, right? And that is something that I feel like everybody should experience at the very least once, or it's something that you should maintain. Yeah, the stakes are very real. Also, to the fact that to realize that you don't know what anybody's going through right now. Like a lot of people could be going through a lot of worse conditions, right? But they don't say anything about it. They don't talk about it. They just tough it out. They just lock the fuck in. They white knuckle through it. But sometimes, reaching out isn't all too bad. Talking about it isn't all that bad. It doesn't cost much to be a little kind, just to show a little bit of kindness to those people and to anybody around you, because you don't know what they could be going through and what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So kindness goes a very long way, and to people who have diabetes, just lock the fuck in, buddy. It fucking sucks, but it's something that you have to deal with. And only you can do it. No one can do it for you.